Look at the first leaders, the whole idea of building the nation they thought could best be articulated by having one-party state. They said, we are so fragile, we are so diverse, that we must have one political party. And there is a sense in which they were right. If you look at your typical European nation, and I want you to look at Europe from Sweden, there will invariably be nation states. If you go to Sweden, they are the Swedes with a small Lap or Sami population. And you'll find they have a small parliament for them. If you go to Norway, you'll discover they are Norwegians, almost 99%. If you go to Finland, the bulk of them are the Finns with a small Swedish population. If you go to Denmark, they are the Danes. If you go to the Netherlands, they are the Dutch. If you go to Spain, where there are multiplicity of the ethnicities, then there are problems. You have a problem, you remember, during the reign of General Franco, of the Basque country, even up till now, the Catalans, the Galicians. So there is a sense in which Europe, in fact, I dare say, Africa handles diversity better than Europe does. If you go to the Baltics, you find the former Yugoslavia, which has produced several countries from Yugoslavia. You have the Slovenes, the Bosnians, the Herzegovina. There is a sense the Soviet Union collapsed before our very eyes. But Africa somehow, and this was once again, many of you will remember in 1963, the Addis Ababa conference, and 1964, the Cairo conference, what is normally referred to as the Nasserite Nyerere's Nkrumahist approach, that we should not redraw African boundaries because it would create conflict. And there was a sense, therefore, that if you came to many African countries, they said, let us have one-party states. And many of the party states, the states or the parties that took over power were revolutionary parties. They were freedom-fighting parties. If you came to Kenya, Kenya African National Union, in Tanzania, TANU and Afro-Shirazi, in South Africa, African National Congress, MPLF, Frelimo, ZANU-PF, and all these parties. And they took the view, let us have one party so that everybody is under the umbrella of that party to avoid ethnic division. And one may quarrel about that particular approach, but if you look at it, there was merit in it. Then, of course, Europe persuaded us. Europe is always in the business of persuading us that you cannot have democracy when there is only one party, and that therefore we have multi-party politics. And many African countries were dragged wailing and kicking to this dinner table of multi-partyism. Nyerere was one of the cleverer ones. He did it before everybody did it and said, let us admit it. And you had NCCR, Mageuzi, CHADEMA, and all those parties. The African politician is a very conflicted individual. Because on the one hand, he has a culture and tradition defining how he behaves, but on the one hand, he also wants to behave as if he is a typical British or Dutch politician. So I say sometimes that when you looked at an African politician, he suffers from split personality. And I say this in all seriousness. What the African politicians in many countries say on the platform is not what they believe in. And our own president, former President Daniel Moi, used to say it very well. After he had read the English speech, he'd say, nimesema hayo nimesema, sasa wacha niseme. In other words, there are things that you say for the comfort and benefit of the so-called modern society and for Europe and America and Washington to hear, but there are things that you now say to Wazawa. And those things are different. Multi-party politics, because when you introduce multi-party politics, the assumption is that there are clear ideological differences. If you go to Europe and America and you talk about the Tories, there are ways in which they believe that government must be run in this way. You go to the United States of America, there are sense in which the Republicans have a way in which they think government should be run. If you go to different countries, but if you come to Tanzania, what is it that CHADEMA wants to do that is different from CCM? What is it that NCCR Mageuzi wants to do that is different from CCM? If you look at them, the difference is possibly 1%. If you go to Kenya, where we have 63 political parties, if you ask these individuals, what do you want to do? They'll tell you we hold the view. They'll not tell you in so many words. I'm the one who normally says it on national television. They hold the view that because the present administration is an administration that has brought together the Kikuyus and the Kalenjins, the next combination should now have the Luos and the Luhyas and the Kambas and a little Maasai, so that essentially the election we'll have in the month of August on the 8th, as I've said rather harshly and bluntly, is not an election on issues. It is an ethnic census to determine whether a combination of Kikuyus and Kalenjins is larger than that of Luos, Luhyas, and Kambas, or vice versa. And if you look at how they have divided it, they have actually said it. If you look at our typical Kenyan politician, he says, we the Luos, it is our turn now. We the Luhyas, it is our turn now. So that when we talk about opposition, running an African country is not very easy. If you go to Angola, it is the Ovambo and the Ovimbundu. If you go to South Africa, it's the same thing. You've got to ensure that Zuma is the president because you've got to settle the spirits of the Zulu. If you go to Nigeria, right now the Igbo think they're excluded. And if General Buhari is unwell, the talk is already there. Will Osinbajo take over, or will it be a northerner? Rather premature, if you ask me. So what is opposition? If I was a president of a country, this is what I would do. Recognizing that African countries are fragile, I would have monthly meetings with all opposition leaders. Monthly. Because some of these opposition leaders, the truth be told, what they want is to be heard. They want to have an opportunity to contribute to the entire national enterprise. And they have good ideas, some of them. Ingawa wengine ni wababaishaji tu. But in many ways, they have good ideas. And I think that there is a sense, if you look at an article that has been written by Mwalimu Nyerere a while ago, he says, if you read more, you become more enlightened.